Welcome to Phillip Island, Victoria in Australia. What a setting we have for this great sporting contest, the Little Penguin Sea to Dune race. Nervous moments always as they gather on the beach, the tension mounting, and away they go. There's the defending champion, wearing his familiar navy blue and white, great waddling style. Another pre-race favourite though, losing touch with the pack. Maybe that's why. A few too many fish in the day's feeding. There's a familiar face, Skip McIntyre, 8 times a champion back in the 90s, a very successful coach now, keeping a keen eye on proceedings. This the leading group, 1 or 2 still able to put on a show for the camera, others just ploughing straight over it. Some resorting to shortcuts. Sad that cheating has crept into this beautiful sport. The judges will have a look at that. But up at the front, the pace is relentless, closing in on those sand dunes that will offer a bed for the night. The fatigue starting to tell. Who's got the finishing kick up on the outside? What a turn of pace from that one, whichever one it is. No answer from the rest, and he takes victory. What a win. There we are, into the Burrow, building an extension with his winnings, and back tomorrow to try and defend his title here on Phillip Island.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to Penguin Live TV. So happy you could join us tonight. We're getting ready for our penguins to show up. My name is Stephen. I'm going to be your host for the evening. I'm going to be taking you on a journey with our penguins. And joining me tonight, we have the wonderful Tom.
Hi everyone. 498 penguins last night. Whether it'll be more or less tonight, who knows? It's a natural event. All we're doing is putting people at the right place at the right time. I'll be keeping an eye on the questions on Facebook. Anything that's interesting and unusual we'll try and pass through. And have a great evening.
Thank you, Tom. That's right. So if you have any questions you want to ask us, put them through on Facebook. Tom will hopefully be able to read them out to me. And if we don't manage to answer your questions tonight, try again tomorrow night, because we'll be broadcasting again tomorrow night and you might get your questions asked on air. Bit of a luck of the draw, really, and it's up to Tom which questions he wants to pose to me tonight. Sometimes he likes to ask me the tricky questions, sometimes he likes to give me an easy one. All right, so we haven't had any penguins yet, which is really good news. Last night our penguins came across the beach at, I think it was about 10 past 6, so maybe they'll be similar tonight. They have been coming around 6 o'clock the last few nights, but we never know exactly when they're going to show up. It's always around half an hour after sunset, but it does vary depending on how dark it is outside, how much cloud cover, how high the tide is, how the penguins are feeling at the moment, and we don't control any of those events, but we're here in time waiting for our penguins to show up. And while we're waiting for our penguins, I do want to acknowledge the country that we are viewing the penguins from. This is the traditional custodians of this land are the Bunurong. I'd like to pay our respects to the elders, both past, present, and emerging. And maybe leave us a comment, maybe letting us know who the traditional custodians of the land where you are viewing from. We always like to know where people are watching from, and the vast majority of our viewers are from Australia. You might have different traditional custodians than we do here on Phillip Island, or Malal, as the Bunurong like to call it. Maybe let us know who the traditional custodians of your land are. It'll be very interesting for us to know. All right, we're going to quickly scan across the beach to see if there's anything happening back and forth. A beautiful scene right now. The sun's going down. It's getting nice and dark. The stands are brightly lit, and up there on the left side of the screen, you can actually see some great big cliffs, sand cliffs. In between the two stands, our penguins will be trying to climb those sand cliffs tonight. Now, our researchers have been out there adding rocks to them, making sure they've been shoveling them down to have a bit of a slope going, because penguins are really good climbers on steep surfaces, but they don't manage the vertical walls very well. So we're giving them a bit of a helpful hand as the large winter swells have created some cliffing along our beaches. But luckily for us here on the Penguins Plus pathway, which is where our camera is facing right now, there's no real cliffing happening, and this is where the vast majority of our penguins like to come across the beach every night. It'll be a bit of a guessing game as to how many penguins are coming home tonight. We never know the exact answer. Sometimes we have, well, maybe just a couple of hundred coming home in winter. Sometimes we get a really big number, around 1,000. Anywhere in between. We're not sure exactly how many we can go. And in fact, about a month ago, we had really low numbers, where we had only 28 penguins crossing on a foggy night. It was one of the lowest number of penguins we've ever had here on record. Not the lowest, but probably one of the lowest. Maybe the second lowest? Can't really know. Haven't checked all of our records. Tom's been here probably long enough to know every record we have here of how many penguins have come across the beach. What do you think, Tom? 28, do you think it was one of our lowest recorded numbers for penguins?
40, and maybe not I've been working. But there could have been a 28, but 40 is the lowest I've ever seen.
Oh, fantastic. So Tom reckons that 40 is one of the lowest he's ever seen. So yeah, that 28 number was not a great night to be here at the Penguin Parade. There were a few people visiting us that night. A lot of them got tickets for another night because unfortunately they had a hard time seeing the penguins in the fog. And you know what? The penguins had a hard time seeing where their pathways home were. Now our penguins, they always wait until nightfall to come home. They make sure it's nice and dark so they can travel home in safety. Because in the daytime there are predators that might try and eat a penguin as soon as it gets out on the get out of the ocean and onto land. So they're waiting until it gets nice and dark, but the only way they know their way home is by their eyesight. They recognize the familiar pathways on their way home, and if it's foggy, they can't see where they need to go. So they get to the water's edge and they look lost. They come to the water's edge, they're looking around thinking, is this the right place? It doesn't look familiar. Do you guys recognize this? And they're turning around in circles, looking around, low to the ground, looking back and forth and back and forth. They go back into the water. And they come out a bit later like, I think this is the right place. Is it though? Can I be really sure? I'm not sure. And they're not very confident during the foggy weather. And that's really the only weather event that affects our penguins' numbers to such a degree. They'll come out, rain or shine, it doesn't matter. But as soon as that fog hits, they don't like coming out of the water. And they'll usually just wait in the water until the fog dissipates and they can come out when it's clear. Because eventually the fog will disappear. Phillip Island is not notorious for its fogs. We get them every so often, but they're pretty rare events, especially in the evening time. All right, still waiting on our penguins. That's just good for us because it gives us more time to enjoy them later on. I always feel a bit nervous when that first group crosses before we started the live stream, but this way we're going to make sure we get every penguin. I'm just scanning the horizon, looking out on the water to see if I can spot a raft of penguins swimming to shore. I did spot a raft out there earlier tonight, so they are out there. The penguins are just waiting to come home. But while they're waiting, I do need to give a bit of a shout out to Kirsten, Lucy, and Winuri in Sydney. They are generally regular watchers, and we want to let you know that our penguins are going to be giving you a friendly huck hello to you this evening. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a wonderful evening. All right, still waiting on these penguins. Might have a look around to see if I can spot any other animals. Got a few people on our stand, so for those of us who can come to visit here at the Phillip Island Nature Parks, come to see our penguins, we do invite you to come and watch our penguins. It's a bit of a special time right now because we have such a reduced capacity that there's really no jostling for position to get the best views on our stands. There's plenty of room for everybody, front row seating, no matter what time you get down here. Please come and see our penguins in person. We'd love to say hello to you, or maybe give you a friendly huck as well. Now the Penguin Parade here is a visitor-funded, not-for-profit organization, and we are at heart a conservation organization. For us, conservation is absolutely paramount. Our penguins would not be here if not for the work we have done over the last decades, helping to restore their habitat, help to reduce the human impact on the penguins, and helping to protect them from the feral animals, the feral flora and fauna that we have here in Australia. And it's been a long and a hard work trying to get these penguin numbers to grow again, trying to get them to recover from their dropping numbers throughout history, and they're doing very well. Back in 1985, we had some researchers coming through, and they said due to the human impacts around here, mostly due to the housing estate that was on the Summerlands Peninsula, and also the Penguin Parade itself not doing enough to protect the penguins, our penguin numbers were dropping. And in 1985, our researchers estimated that roughly by the year 2000, these penguins would have gone extinct off Phillip Island, which would have been devastating, especially here at the Penguin Parade, because without penguins, we're not much of a penguin parade. So we decided, this is something we need to change. We need to really get our act together. We need to work to help protect our penguins. And we have done a lot of work to protect the penguins. We petitioned the government, and we managed to get rid of the housing estate up on the Summerlands Peninsula, to buy back all the houses and give that land back to the penguins. And it wasn't an overnight venture either. It took several years. I think the last house was bought back in 2010, which is not that long ago. We bought the houses, not we. The government bought the houses. We don't have that kind of money, but the government bought the houses and we moved them off the island. We've given the land back to the penguins. We're taking all the infrastructure out so the penguins have more room to expand their colony. And we're making sure we're getting rid of all of the invasive weeds that were planted, because people like to plant gardens in their homes. And unfortunately, a lot of the gardens that people plant have invasive flora in it. And those invasive plants tend to outcompete the Australian plants, and they spread and they grow and they just keep spreading around and around, and they damage the environment. And not just for our penguins, but for the other native animals in Australia as well. So we're getting a lot of work done removing all of the weeds. And some of them you might not think are weeds. We've got rose bushes, we've got daffodils, we've got petunias, lots of plants that are just spreading around. But we have some more noxious weeds as well that we have to get rid of, like boxthorn and apple of Sodom, that we're always trying to get rid of. And it's a lot of work to do. 1,800 hectares of land is under our jurisdiction, and we do our best to see if they get rid of those plants and put in the native plants for our penguins and for the other animals here on Phillip Island. It takes a lot of work. Our penguin numbers in 1985 were around 12,000 or so penguins, and they have grown since 1985 to be around 32,000 little penguins. We're not including the babies in those numbers. Those are breeding adult penguins. So it's quite a bit more than 32,000 penguins around here on Phillip Island. We're just not counting the babies. Although this time of year, we're not expecting too many babies. We think our penguins might start to get interested into the breeding season, but it's still a little bit too early yet to be seeing any babies. It's a bit early to even really see much mating behavior, much courtship behavior. You can see it, of course, this early in the year. We'll keep our eyes open because we're always eager to see when the breeding season really gets underway. It's an exciting time of year. All right, still haven't seen any penguins. I just heard over the radio. Sorry about that. I got this fancy little radio in my ear. Sally was saying that she thinks there's a group of penguins approaching Penguins Plus. Fantastic. So she says there's a raft out here. Let's see if any of you guys have eagle eyes and might be able to spot them before I do. Now, a raft of penguins is a group of penguins on the ocean. They form up into these groups to cross the beach with the safety of numbers. And a raft basically looks like a dark patch on the water that's moving at a different speed than the waves. Now, I think I can see a raft in the top left corner, just in front of that wave, or just on that wave that's about to come crashing over them. It's a bit tricky to see it. Our camera's not the best in this low light, and there's such a far distance as well for it to try and capture. But we'll keep our eyes open. Let's see if any of you can spot those little penguins swimming closer and closer to land. Now, sometimes there's a waiting game. You just have to be patient. If you were here in person, your anticipation would be growing and growing. You'd be hearing the sounds of the waves. You'd be hearing our little penguins hawking their hearts out. And they'd just magically appear on the water's edge right there. Fantastic. I think there's a few penguins behind them as well. Let's see if those two groups join together. Now, a group of penguins that are in the water is called a raft of penguins. A group of penguins on land is just called a group of penguins, although lots of people like to affectionately call them a waddle of penguins. That's not a scientific term. It's just a fun little nickname we like to give those groups. We got a few people standing up, blocking our view. We'll do our best to make sure our ranger has a chat to them so they don't block the view for too long. But our penguins are going to be coming around this side of the stand very soon. We got a couple of celebrities standing up. They're trying to steal the limelight from our penguins. That's all right. Look at them properly wearing their masks. That's what we love to see here on Phillip Island. Everybody's wearing their masks, doing their best to socially distance. I'm assuming those two live together. Otherwise, they're not socially distancing at all. And unfortunately for our penguins, they're not very good social distances either. They like to form those little tight-knit groups as they cross the beach. The safety in numbers really works when they stick close together. They're not great at maintaining that 1.5 meter distance between them. But luckily for them, they don't have to suffer from the same pandemic we do. They've probably been enjoying this a lot more than we have, haven't they? Their colony is probably a little bit more peaceful and quiet. Here they go. Now let's get guesses in the comments. How many penguins do you think crossed that beach right in front of us? It's a little bit tricky with the people blocking the view, but put your guesses in the comments. I'll let you know how many cross the beach in the next few minutes. And here they go, scrambling over the rocks. And it's not fair if you think that Sally is our penguin counter tonight. It's not fair if you think Sally might not have the exact right number. You guys can hit pause on the video. You can count them all in a row. Sally, she's down the beach. She's got these great big binoculars. She's looking up and down the beach for not just this group of penguins, but many groups of penguins. And she gets one chance to count them on such a high tide. And she's counting them as fast as she can. It's a really good estimate. All right. Do we have any good guesses for how many penguins have crossed the beach, Tom?
Anywhere between 35 and 150.
Ooh, I don't think there's 150 in that group. That's quite a big guess. But yeah, a lot of good guesses, anywhere between 35 and 150. But I think she said it was around 41. 41, thanks, Tom. He's got a much better ear than I do when he's listening to the radio. So 41 penguins in that group. Let us know if you think Sally was right. And don't judge her too harshly if she's not 100% accurate. We are looking for a good estimate on how many penguins cross the beach. Oh, fantastic. They're going through the little pond there. As Sky, one of our presenters, former presenter, she's on maternity leave right now. She loves to call it our ephemeral pool. It comes and goes depending on the season and depending on how much rain we get. And I'm just keeping an eye out on the screen above my head, trying to see if there might be any penguins coming along the Penguin Highway. But we got this group of 6 penguins or so about to make their way up the hill. And I have no doubt that they're keeping an eye out for the cheeky goose that's known to frequent this area. We have a lot of people trying to come up with different names for our geese here on Phillip Island, giving them little proper names. I think one of my favorites is Goosey McGooseface. Oh, here they come on the Penguin Highway. Let's swap over to this. Fantastic. And here they come. So we have Goosey McGooseface. Another one that I really liked was Baron Gustav. Baron von Gustav. That's a great name for a goose. There they go. Now these penguins are going on a journey home tonight. They've spent at least the entire day in the ocean. The penguins who have spent the least amount of time in the water would be the ones who had left this morning and are coming back this night. Most of these penguins would likely have spent a few days on the ocean. Our penguins can sleep on the water. They don't need to come home every single night. Why are you guys ducking in over there? Wonder if you guys seen something over on the left. I can't see anything. Maybe you guys in the comments can spot them. Ooh, and we got a massive group. Let's have a look at these penguins here. Whoa! Now that's a bigger group. That's more than the 41 penguins in the first group. I know Sally tried to give me the number through over on the radio, but I was too busy getting excited about this group to really listen to how many. I can tell you there's a lot. There's a lot of penguins in this group, which is just fantastic to see. They made us wait, but boy, is it worth the wait. Now, did you hear how many penguins are in that group, Tom?
She called it as two groups, 74 and 70 something, so about 150 odd.
150 odd penguins, two groups that have joined up into one. That is amazing. And then just above my head, there's 4 little penguins coming straight towards you, but I think these penguins that are coming around this way are quite impressive. I'm just going to focus on these ones splashing across this little pool, this little pond that we have here. Now, if you were here in person, you would be able to hear the magnificent sounds of our penguins just splash, 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 splashing through the puddles. It is such a unique sound that our penguins make. Their little webbed feet make such an interesting noise when they're going through little puddles of water like that. It's so much fun to listen to. So please, when you get the chance, come and visit us. Come say hello to all of the friendly rangers here. You can say hello to myself, Jordan, Megan. Sky will be back eventually when she's ready to say goodbye to the bubs for the evening and have a night of a bit of peace and quiet. We also got Tom and Rachel and Therese, and there's plenty of us who will be around at the Penguin Parade wanting to say a big hello or friendly huck huck to you if you come and stop by and greet us. I was wondering where that group of penguins might be on the Penguin Highway, and there they are, right on cue. Thanks, guys. Fantastic. Love watching these little guys cruising their way down the Penguin Highway. And yeah, they're going on a journey home. Some of them might have a couple of kilometers to walk to get home. Well, I should say up to 2 kilometers to get home. Most of these penguins are a bit luckier than that. Their homes are quite a bit closer to the shoreline, but they still have quite a journey to travel before they get home. Fantastic. So these guys are doing very well, having a bit of a rest here. The last group actually was pausing around here as well. Is there a goose up ahead? Bit interesting. They are definitely pausing and looking around. We'll have to see if a goose comes by and says hello to these penguins in the very abrupt and rude fashion that it likes to do. Well, they're definitely hiding under the boardwalk there. I can't get too far over. It gets really bright there with the lights. Very interesting. Let's swap back over to the main camera. You can probably see... Need to do this. Sorry, just trying to control the 2 cameras at once. And always a bit of a struggle for me. You know how men are. We're horrible at multitasking. Trying to do 2 things at once just frazzles my brain a little bit. Oh, fantastic. Just above my head, got a couple of penguins on the highway coming their way towards us. They're looking inside the underground viewing. Let's see, what are you guys looking at? Oh, I was too slow. I was hoping to catch up with them, but they decided to run on past. Yeah, the camera's not fast enough to catch up to them. We'll just get their tails disappearing out of sight along here. Oh, that camera probably could have used a little bit more of a clean. That's the problem with having a camera out in the wild. It does get a bit of dirt and muck on it from time to time, so I got a bit of a spotty lens that we're looking at the penguins through. I did ask them to clean this camera beforehand, but it looks like it's already gotten mucked up again. Wow, we had such a big group that just came across. Might throw it to Tom to see if he's got any questions from our viewers.
Couple of questions, but one, Kaylee asked us the other night, or made this statement the other night when I was working. She was talking about where penguins get their names from. There's a few different theories around, but the one I've always been told, and I've just double checked it, is that there was a bird called the great auk in the Northern Hemisphere in the 1800s, up until the 1800s. They got hunted out. They're now extinct. And penguinus was part of their scientific name. and they do look a lot like a penguin. They're not considered a penguin because they weren't discovered until many years later. So that's where the theory came from. If you look up Wikipedia, you'll see a picture of a great auk. It's AUK, and they look very similar to a penguin, but they're not a penguin.
That's true. And it actually reminds me, I speak a bit of French. And whenever I talk to somebody in French here, I always ask them, how do you say penguin in French? And of course, 99% of the time, everybody who speaks French says, it's penguin. And I say, no, it's not penguin, because that is the word in French for the great auk, which is very similar in shape and appearance. So you can see where the confusion happens there, a bit of the origination of the word. That's fantastic.
And we do have a question from Rachel. What's the survival rate of the fledglings or chicks in their first year at sea?
Oh, it's not always the best and friendliest statistic to give out.
It is nature.
Yeah, it is nature. So unfortunately, with all animals in the animal kingdom, humans are the exception to this rule, it seems. Most of the young don't do very well. So I'd say about 20% survive that first year, which is not a lot, but it is quite a few penguins that do manage to survive. And our penguins, they always have 2 eggs to start with to help increase their odds. If it's a really good year, they might be able to raise both of their chicks to adulthood to increase the chances of their survival. But if it's a bit of an average year for fish out in the ocean, maybe just one of those chicks will survive. And if only one of the 2 are surviving to fledge, then that's already about 50% in the first few months. So yeah, not always the happiest thing to talk about, but this is nature, and it does highlight the importance of protecting our penguins and protecting the environment, because they have a hard enough time making it in the world without the human impacts, without the negative human impacts that can occur. Penguins might have a bit of competition against humans who might be overfishing their food source. We can bring it back to a story about how pilchard used to be, I'm going to get these statistics wrong, and if Andre, one of our lead researchers, is listening, he's going to be quite upset with me. I always get my numbers wrong with these, but I think pilchard used to be about 60 or 80% of their diet?
Yeah, 90%.
80 or 90%, there you go. So it used to be the massive part of their diet. And then, unfortunately, their pilchard population was devastated by a disease brought in by the fisheries. One of the fish farms released a disease from imported pilchard into the native population here, and it went basically down to 0%. So they lost about 80% of their diet. It was just gone. And that was pretty much directly caused by human impact. Not intentionally, it was quite indirect. I know the fisheries were not trying to harm the penguins. It wasn't their intention at all, but just those unfortunate things that do happen that can have such a massive impact on the environment and in ways that we might not foresee. So it's very important for us here at the Penguin Parade and here where you are at home to think about the impacts your choices might be making on the environment. Now, we're not saying you have to be 100% sustainable and renewable and be absolutely perfect in how you live your life at home. Trying to get from maybe where you are right now to being that 100% perfect, that's a big ask. What we do try and ask people to do is to take that first little step. Lots of little steps will make the progress to get you where we need to be. So if you wanted to make a step, maybe buying your own bags that you take to the supermarket. Most of you already probably have them. Maybe just remembering to take them with you rather than buying the plastic bags. That's a first good step. If you're a coffee drinker, you can get a keep cup instead of buying disposable cups that you throw in the rubbish bin at the end of every drink. You get a keep cup that you wash and bring the next time. Lots of little gestures like that can make a world of difference for the environment and such a big impact for our penguins. All right, Tom did actually give me the 5-minute warning about 7 minutes ago. Unfortunately for Tom, I think I forgot that he gave me that 5-minute warning. So he's been stuck here listening to me waffle on and waving at me at the side like, no, you got to finish, you got to finish. I get so excited looking at the penguins that I sometimes forget to stop talking. I'm not as bad as Jordan is in that respect, but I do like to waffle on, especially about our little penguins. Now, let's do one last question, Tom, before we wind up. See if you got one more good one for me.
This is from, I think it's a leash. If the penguins come home at night, does this mean they have good night vision?
Do penguins have good night vision? Now, I'm not sure how it compares to human night vision because we have not that bad of night vision. You can go out in the dark, and if you let your eyes really adjust, you'll be able to see pretty well in the dark. As long as you turn off all the lights around you, and you don't keep turning on your smartphone and losing your night vision, you should be able to see pretty well in the dark, especially if it's a moonlit night. You should have pretty good vision. Our penguins are quite similar. They don't have the problems with smartphones or technology around them to ruin their night vision. They really let their eyes adapt to the nighttime brightness. And some of you might be thinking, what about all the lights that you have here at the Penguin Parade? We've designed these lights to have a minimal impact on our penguins. They're in a yellow and orange color spectrum, which our penguins don't really see. It's the same way that our eyes don't see ultraviolet or infrared. If we were to make these great big floodlights out of infrared light, it wouldn't do anything for us. It wouldn't shine any light on the penguins that we could see. We'd be thinking we're seeing these penguins in the dark. But if an animal came along that could see infrared, the whole beach would be brightly lit up for them, which is kind of what's happening for us. We have these orange and yellow lights on the beach. It lights up the beach for our eyes, but the penguins think they're walking home in the dark. So their eyes have adjusted for the darkness, and they can see well enough to make their way home. It doesn't seem to cause them any problems. I'm just looking for that goose. I can see it on the screen above me. And it's not really a Penguin Live TV unless I see the cheeky goose. Now, who is this? Is this Goosey McGooseface or is this Baron von Gustav coming down? I'm not sure which one's the boy's name and which one's the girl's name. You can choose that if you like. But yeah, the penguins are probably going to keep their distance from this goose. Making their way. Oh, is that a bandicoot or is that a bunny? I just lost him. What are you? There you are. What is that? That's Bandicoot. Hello, Bandicoot. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. This is an eastern barred bandicoot, ladies and gentlemen. They used to be extinct in the wild, and only very, very recently were they taken off the extinct in the wild list because we have brought them here to Phillip Island. They've now been upgraded to critically endangered. And it feels a little silly to get so excited about an animal being on the critically endangered list, but those eastern barred bandicoots have been upgraded to the critically endangered list, and they seem to be doing very well here on Phillip Island. We released 66, 67 bandicoots here a few years ago, and I think that guy's kind of get a look at the little bandicoot himself. And the last estimate I heard from one of our education rangers is there's about 300 or so of these bandicoots here on the Summerlands Peninsula just a few years later, which is fantastic to see. Their numbers are doing really well, and we love to see it. It's just part of what we're doing here on Phillip Island, helping to protect not only our penguins, but also the bandicoots, even the Cape Breton geese. Not everybody's a fan of them, but I sure am. They are a native species, and they are wonderful and quite beautiful as well, as long as they're not beating up our penguins too much. But I do want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching tonight. If you did want to donate and maybe adopt one of our animals in a symbolic adoption, there should be a link in the description to the Penguin Foundation. That is our charity organization where you can choose to adopt a different type of animal, whether it's a penguin or a bandicoot or a goose. There's plenty of animals to choose to adopt. A symbolic adoption, just so you know, you're not going to be mailed a penguin in the mail, but the money that you use to adopt one of these penguins or one of these animals, whichever animal it might be, does go to our Penguin Foundation, and they use that money to help us with our conservation work, and they also help to fund our wildlife clinic where we take our sick and injured wildlife. I've had to admit a couple of penguins into that wildlife clinic as myself, and it's always nice to know that it is going to be there and it is going to have the funding to continue running. So if you wanted to help us out, make a donation to the Penguin Foundation. I know any sick and injured penguins would greatly appreciate that through the care that they would be given. Again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It was wonderful to share the penguins with you, and I hope to see you all again in the near future. Bye-bye.